Have you ever had one of those nights where you're finally comfortable, the lights are off, your blanket is the perfect temperature, and then, out of absolutely nowhere, your brain decides it's the perfect time to remind you about that incredibly awkward thing you did 6 years ago? You know, the one, maybe you called your teacher mom. Maybe you confidently waved back at someone who wasn't actually waving at you. Maybe you told a waiter, "Love you," instead of "thank you." Or maybe, and somehow this always feels worse, you made a joke that nobody laughed at, and your brain has refused to let the footage disappear ever since. What's strange is that you probably haven't thought about that moment all day. Not while working, not while scrolling your phone, not while eating dinner, but the second your head touches the pillow, boom, your brain rolls out the director's cut. Not only do you remember it, you relive it. Every word, every facial expression, every painful second. Sometimes you even physically react. You bury your face in the pillow. You groan. You whisper, "Why did I do that?" You might even kick your blanket like you're trying to escape your own memories. And somehow, after surviving thousands of perfectly normal days, your brain decides that this random 5-second moment from years ago deserves tonight's primetime slot. It's almost impressive. But here's the really weird part. Almost everyone experiences this. People from different countries, different ages, different personalities. Even people who seem incredibly confident admit that embarrassing memories have a habit of showing up when they're trying to fall asleep. So why? Why does our brain wait until we're lying in bed? Why doesn't it replay our greatest achievements with the same enthusiasm? Why is it that forgetting where you left your keys lasts 20 minutes, but accidentally calling your boss dad seems to stay stored forever? It turns out your brain isn't trying to torture you. At least, probably not. Researchers still don't have every answer, but current evidence suggests there's a fascinating mix of psychology, memory, attention, and even a little bit of evolution behind this strangely universal bedtime tradition. And once you understand what's happening behind the scenes, those midnight cringe attacks suddenly make a lot more sense. Think about what your brain is doing during a typical day. From the moment you wake up, it's constantly being bombarded with information, emails, notifications, conversations, traffic, homework, meetings, music, videos. That one person who somehow walks unbelievably slowly in front of you every single morning. Your brain is busy filtering thousands of tiny decisions every hour. Most of the time, it doesn't have much room to revisit old memories because it's focused on solving today's problems. But bedtime changes everything. The room gets quiet. Your phone finally goes face down. The conversations stop. There are fewer things demanding your attention. And suddenly, your brain has free time. Imagine a movie theater that's been showing action movies all day long. Then, late at night, every new movie is cancelled. The projector operator starts digging through old film reels instead. That's surprisingly similar to what our minds often do. When external distractions fade away, internal thoughts become much easier to notice. Psychologists sometimes refer to this as the brain's default mode. Instead of concentrating on the outside world, your attention naturally shifts inward. You start thinking about yourself, your future, your relationships, your decisions, and unfortunately, your collection of awkward moments. This doesn't necessarily mean you're becoming more negative. It simply means your brain finally has enough quiet space to wander wherever it wants. The problem is, your brain isn't exactly an unbiased storyteller. If you've ever opened your photo gallery looking for one specific picture, you know how quickly you end up scrolling through photos from years ago. One picture reminds you of another. That reminds you of a vacation, which reminds you of an old friend, which somehow reminds you of that humiliating presentation you gave in high school. Congratulations, you were trying to find a picture of your dog. Instead, you're emotionally back in 2017. Memory works in surprisingly similar ways. Our thoughts aren't stored neatly inside labeled folders. They're connected through huge networks of associations. One tiny thought can activate another, which activates another, which activates another, until suddenly you're replaying something you hadn't remembered in years. Sometimes there's no obvious connection at all. You might simply roll over in bed, hear the air conditioner click, or notice the smell of your blanket. Tiny environmental cues can unexpectedly trigger old memories without you even realizing why. Researchers are still studying exactly how these associations form, but current evidence suggests our memories are far more interconnected than they feel. Your brain isn't intentionally searching for your worst moments. It's following a chain of invisible links. Unfortunately, embarrassing memories tend to have a lot of links because embarrassment is emotional, and emotional experiences are usually remembered more strongly than ordinary ones. Think about yesterday. Can you remember every normal conversation you had? Probably not. But if yesterday you accidentally tripped while everyone was watching, you'd probably remember every single detail. The sound, the faces, the silence afterward, maybe even what color your shoes were. Emotion acts like a giant highlighter inside the brain. Experiences that make us laugh, cry, feel afraid, or feel deeply embarrassed often receive extra attention when memories are being stored. Scientists believe emotional events may be processed differently because they were historically important for survival. After all, remembering dangerous situations could help our ancestors avoid repeating deadly mistakes. Modern embarrassment isn't exactly life-threatening. Accidentally liking someone's 5-year-old Instagram post probably won't end your bloodline. But your brain doesn't always distinguish between social danger and physical danger as cleanly as you'd hope. To your brain, social rejection has always mattered. Humans evolved as deeply social creatures. For most of human history, belonging to a group wasn't just emotionally rewarding. It could mean the difference between survival and isolation. Being accepted meant food, protection, cooperation. Being rejected could have serious consequences. Many psychologists believe this is one reason social mistakes often feel disproportionately painful. Your brain may treat them as important information worth remembering, not because it enjoys making you cringe, but because it wants to help you avoid similar situations in the future. It's basically an overprotective security guard. Unfortunately, it's terrible at choosing appropriate meeting times. You're trying to sleep. Perfect. Let's review every awkward conversation you've ever had. Of course, if embarrassing memories were actually useful every single time, they probably wouldn't feel so frustrating. Because let's be honest, most of these memories aren't teaching us anything new anymore. You already know you shouldn't have tried to tell that joke. You already know sending that text to the wrong person wasn't your greatest achievement. You don't need another replay. Yet your brain keeps hitting the play again button anyway. Why? One possible explanation comes from something psychologists call the negativity bias. In simple terms, our brains often pay more attention to negative experiences than positive ones. Not because life is mostly negative, but because missing something dangerous has historically been more costly than overlooking something pleasant. Imagine two prehistoric humans. One notices beautiful flowers. The other notices the lion hiding behind those flowers. Guess which observation is more likely to influence tomorrow's survival? Our brains gradually evolved to give extra attention to potential threats. Even today, that system is still running. Only now, the lion is sometimes an awkward conversation from middle school. Obviously, your embarrassing karaoke performance isn't actually dangerous, but your emotional alarm system doesn't always update its software. Instead, it quietly labels the memory as important. Don't repeat this. The funny thing is, it often keeps that label forever. This is why compliments can disappear almost instantly. Someone tells you that you gave an amazing presentation. You smile, you say thanks, by tomorrow. You've mostly forgotten it. But one person laughs at the wrong moment, or gives you a strange look, or you accidentally pronounce a simple word completely wrong. Suddenly, your brain archives that event in what feels like permanent storage. It's a little unfair. Imagine if your photo app worked the same way. Every embarrassing selfie automatically became your lock screen. Every good picture vanished after 24 hours. You'd probably uninstall the app immediately. Yet that's surprisingly close to how many people describe their own memories. The good moments fade quietly. The awkward ones stay in high definition. Fortunately, reality is a little more balanced than it feels. Research suggests we don't actually remember only negative experiences. Instead, Negative experiences often grab our attention more easily, and attention plays a huge role in memory. The more attention you give a memory, the stronger it can become, which creates a surprisingly sneaky cycle. You remember something embarrassing. You react emotionally. You think about it again. That extra attention strengthens the memory, which makes it easier to remember next time, which creates another emotional reaction, which strengthens it even more. It's almost like repeatedly walking through the same path in a grassy field. The more often you walk it, the easier that path becomes to find again. Meanwhile, paths you rarely use slowly disappear beneath the grass. Our memories often behave in a similar way. This may explain why certain embarrassing moments seem impossible to forget. It's not necessarily because they were objectively important. It's because we've accidentally practiced remembering them, sometimes for years. Ironically, your brain may be strengthening the very memory you'd love to erase. And bedtime is the perfect opportunity. No distractions, no notifications, no conversations, just you, your pillow, and that one thing you said during freshman orientation. But here's something even stranger. Have you ever noticed that when someone else tells you about one of their embarrassing moments, it usually doesn't sound nearly as bad as they think? A friend says, "I can't believe I tripped walking into the meeting." And your honest reaction is, "Oh, I barely noticed." Meanwhile, if you trip walking into the meeting, you become convinced everyone will remember it forever. That difference isn't just your imagination. Psychologists have studied something remarkably similar. It's often called the spotlight effect. The basic idea is surprisingly simple. We naturally overestimate how much other people notice us. After all, we're the main character in our own experience. We see every awkward pause, every stumble, every voice crack, every weird facial expression. Other people don't. They're usually busy worrying about their own. Think about the last grocery store you visited. Can you describe exactly what every stranger was wearing? Probably not. Can you remember every awkward thing someone else did while shopping? Almost certainly not, because you weren't paying that much attention, and everyone else is doing exactly the same thing. They're starring in their own movie, not yours. Once you realize this, something funny starts happening. You begin noticing that everyone else has their own collection of embarrassing stories. The coworker who accidentally joined a video meeting with the camera on while still wearing pajamas. The friend who confidently pushed a door that clearly said, "pull." The guy who walked into a glass window because he thought it was an open doorway. The woman who spent 5 minutes waving at someone before realizing they were waving to the person behind her. Nobody escapes. Embarrassment isn't proof that you're weird. It's proof that you're human. In fact, some psychologists believe embarrassment serves an important social purpose. Imagine a world where nobody ever felt embarrassed. Someone cuts in line, no reaction. Someone insults another person, no guilt. Someone accidentally offends everyone in the room, no discomfort at all. Social life would become complicated. Embarrassment may actually help strengthen relationships by signaling that we care about how our actions affect other people. When you blush after making a mistake, you're communicating something without saying a word. "I know that was awkward. I didn't mean for that to happen. I'm aware of it too." Current research suggests these reactions can even make people appear more trustworthy in certain situations. That's right. The emotion you've spent years trying to avoid might actually help other people see you as more genuine. Of course, that doesn't mean you'll suddenly enjoy embarrassing moments. Nobody wakes up hoping to accidentally call their new boss by their dog's name. But it does suggest that embarrassment isn't simply a design flaw. It's part of the complicated system that helps humans live together. And here's something that might surprise you even more. Many of the moments we obsess over, other people genuinely don't remember. Researchers have repeatedly found that people often overestimate how long others think about their mistakes. Think back to your own life. Can you remember every awkward thing your classmates did in high school? Probably not. Can you remember every time a coworker stumbled over a sentence? Almost certainly not. Your brain simply didn't keep those memories. Everyone else was too busy managing their own lives. It's a little like going to a crowded beach. You spend 20 minutes worrying that everyone is looking at your swimsuit. Meanwhile, one family is trying to stop their toddler from eating sand. Someone else is chasing a beach ball. Another person is wondering whether they remembered to lock their car. Almost nobody is thinking about you. Oddly enough, that's incredibly comforting. Still, even after understanding all this, those late-night cringe attacks don't magically disappear. Knowledge helps. But brains aren't software updates. You can't install new information and instantly erase old habits. Instead, something much smaller tends to happen. The next time an embarrassing memory appears, instead of immediately believing the story your brain is telling, you pause. You recognize what's happening. Oh, my brain is doing that bedtime thing again. That tiny moment of awareness changes everything. Because you're no longer trapped inside the memory. You're observing it. It's the difference between being caught in a thunderstorm and watching one through a window. The storm still exists, but it doesn't completely control you. Some psychologists believe this kind of awareness can reduce the emotional intensity of recurring thoughts over time, not by forcing them away, but by changing your relationship with them. Ironically, the harder we try not to think about something, the more attention we often give it. It's like someone saying, whatever you do, don't think about a pink elephant. Well, now you're thinking about a pink elephant. Our minds can be wonderfully uncooperative. Trying to aggressively suppress embarrassing memories sometimes gives them even more importance. Instead, simply noticing them and letting them pass without starting another 10-minute mental replay may gradually weaken that familiar cycle. It isn't an instant fix. Researchers are still exploring exactly how these processes work. But many experts agree that attention plays an important role in determining which thoughts stick around and which ones slowly fade. And honestly, that's probably good news, because it means your brain isn't permanently broken. It's just doing what human brains have always done. Maybe that's why these late-night memories feel so strangely universal. They're not proof that you're uniquely awkward. They're not evidence that everyone secretly judges you. And they're definitely not a sign that your life peaked in 7th grade because you accidentally sneezed on your science project. They're simply one of the side effects of having a brain that's constantly trying to learn from experience. Sometimes, it just gets a little overenthusiastic. In fact, if you could somehow peek inside millions of bedrooms around the world tonight, you'd probably see something surprisingly similar. Someone suddenly remembering they introduced themselves twice to the same person. Someone replaying a job interview from 3 years ago. Someone wondering why they ever thought frosted tips were a good hairstyle. Someone quietly whispering, "Why did I say that?" It's almost comforting to imagine, not because everyone is suffering, but because everyone is carrying around their own tiny museum of awkward memories. Yours just happens to be the one you can visit. And here's one final twist. The memories that embarrass us today often become the stories we laugh about tomorrow. Think about family dinners, road trips, college reunions, old friends catching up after years apart. How many conversations eventually begin with, "Remember when I walked into the wrong classroom, sent that email to the entire company, tried to open the neighbor's car because I thought it was mine." At the time, those moments felt catastrophic. Years later, they're usually hilarious. Somehow, time quietly edits the emotional soundtrack. The embarrassment fades. The comedy survives. Maybe that's because distance changes perspective. Or maybe our brains gradually realize those moments weren't nearly as dangerous as they originally believed. Either way, many of the memories that once made us hide under a blanket eventually become the stories that make entire groups laugh together. It's a reminder that today's cringe memory may simply be tomorrow's favorite anecdote. And if that transformation happens often enough, maybe our brains don't need to treat every awkward moment like a lifelong emergency. After all, nobody remembers your life as one perfect performance. People remember moments, conversations, kindness, shared laughter, the way you made them feel. Not that tiny voice crack during a presentation in 2019. Not that one weird text with the accidental typo. Not the time you walked confidently into the wrong restroom before immediately turning around. Most of those moments feel enormous because you experienced them from the inside. Everyone else experienced them from the outside. And those are very different perspectives. So tonight, if your brain decides to screen another surprise rerun from the most embarrassing moments collection, maybe don't panic. Maybe don't assume it means anything is wrong with you. Instead, smile for a second. Recognize the pattern. Remember that millions of other people are probably lying awake at this exact moment, replaying something equally ridiculous. Some are reliving a terrible joke. Some are replaying an awkward first date. Some are wondering why they once thought saying "you too" after a waiter said, "enjoy your meal," was the worst mistake in human history. We're all starring in slightly different versions of the same strange movie. And maybe that's one of the funniest things about being human. So now we're curious. What's the most random embarrassing memory your brain insists on replaying right before you fall asleep? Share it in the comments. Chances are, someone else has done the exact same thing. And if not, you'll probably make all of us feel a little better about our own.